I tried to beat Pokémon Black, but each of my Pokémon could only use one move. And to make things even harder, I also made it a Nuzlocke. On top of that, I can only swap one move on my team per gym, which means I'll be stuck with some pretty bad moves for the majority of the run. So, here's how it went. I began my journey by choosing Tepig as my starter, and after receiving the Pokédex, I set out towards my first badge. On the first route, I caught a Patrat, and after making it to Akamula Town, I saw Getsis giving a speech, and I faced N, where I took him down quite easily. Whilst going through Route 2, I caught a Purloin, and once I reached Striaton City, I picked up the Gift Pansage from the Dream Yard to help with the first gym. But before I could take on the gym leaders, I had to battle Sharon, and that's where I suffered the first loss of this run. My Purloin fainted, becoming the very first casualty of this challenge. Despite the setback, I pressed on and faced Cress in the gym. Using Tepig's tackle, I took down his Lillipup, and then switched to Pansage, who finished the fight with Vine Whip against his Pampor. And with that, I had the first badge of the run secured. Before heading to the second gym, I needed to make sure my team stayed within the rules of this challenge. Since each Pokemon can only have one move, I used PK Hex, which is a game editing tool, to replace the extra move slots with Splash. This is so I'm not forced to learn extra moves like you would have to if you had empty move slots, and I continue to do this around every gym throughout the video. On my way to Nacrene City, I caught a Pidove on Route 3, and after dealing with Team Plasma in the Wellspring Cave, I picked up a Rock'n'Roller. Tepig also learned Flame Charge at this point, which I used my one move swap on to give me a stronger fire type move. And before reaching the gym, I rounded out my squad with a Timber just outside of Pinwheel Forest, which is one of the more reliable fighting types for this part of the game. But the real challenge was waiting inside the gym. Lenora is infamous for her Watchog's Retaliate, one of the most dangerous moves in early Unova. And during the fight, I learned that lesson the hard way. Her Watchog landed a critical hit Retaliate on my Pignite, and just like that, my starter went down. Losing your starter in any Nuzlocke is pretty painful, but here it felt especially brutal, considering I just used one of my very limited move swaps on him. Even so, the rest of my team rallied together. Rock'n'Roller, Timber, and the others managed to pull through, and after almost losing a few other Pokemon, I earned the basic badge. But it came at a heavy cost. I was moving on without the Pokemon I'd started my journey with. After beating the gym, I started heading towards Castelia City, which gave me the chance for some more encounters. But things didn't go so smoothly. I KO'd my Swaddle encounter inside of Pinwheel Forest, and not long after, I lost my Munna to a Team Plasma Grunt. Still, I managed to recover the stolen Dragon Skull and push on. Once I reached Castelia, I strengthened the team. I evolved Pansage using a Leaf Stone that I got from the docks. I picked up the Eviolite for Rock'n'Roller to give it some much needed bulk at this stage. And I also caught a Darumaka on Route 4, which felt like the perfect replacement for my starter. Before the gym, I used my one move swap at this point to give Rock'n'Roller Smackdown, an essential upgrade to handle bug types. And around this time, Pidove evolved as well, rounding out the team nicely. To cross from the gym, it was time to face Berg. His team wasn't easy, but with Rock'n'Roller's new Smackdown and Darumaka having Fire Fang, I was quite easily able to get through. There was a scary moment where Darumaka nearly went down, but it managed to hang on, and in the end, I earned the Insect Badge without losing any more Pokemon. Going into Nimbasa, I knew Elisa's gym would be one of the biggest challenges of the run. Her Emolgas that had Volt Switch are infamous, and with my one move rule, I had to prepare carefully. To give myself the best chance at the gym, I used Repels on Route 4 to give myself better odds of a Sandile encounter at the Relic Castle. Its ground typing would be vital. After that, I made it to Nimbasa, and I faced N after a romantic time on the Ferris wheel. But the fight came at a cost. I lost my Tranquil. Another painful death on the journey. But still, my team grew stronger with new additions. On Route 5, I caught a Trubbish, and it came holding the Black Sludge, which is basically poison type leftovers, which was an incredible find this early on. And inside Lost Lawn Forest, I found a Cottony, and just outside it, a Gothita. And in the progress of this, both Timber and Rock'n'Roller evolved, giving me some much stronger options for the gym. With the new team set, I took on the roller coaster puzzle in the gym and challenged Elisa. Using Sandile's Sand Tomb and Boulder's Raw Bulk with Smackdown, I managed to handle her Emolgas and Zebstrika without losing anyone. I walked out the gym with no deaths, and with the Bolt badge in hand, the run was starting to feel like it had some momentum. When I was crossing the Driftvale Bridge, it gave me another encounter. A Ducklet, which added some useful water and flying coverage to the team. But before I could take on the gym, I had to go to the cold storage, where I cleared out Team Plasma and I picked up a Vanillite along the way. From there, I headed up to Route 6 and caught a Carablast, filling out my team with some variety. Meanwhile, my Sandile evolved into Krokorok, giving me a stronger answer to Clay's ground types. But then, it was time for the Driftvale gym, and honestly, I struggled more with the puzzle than the battle. It's supposed to be a kid's game, but for some reason I always get stuck on the puzzles, which I think is a pretty common theme for me at this point. But eventually, I worked my way down to Clay. In the fight itself, Krokorok and Gerda did the heavy lifting, and I managed to beat them without any losses. With 5 badges secured, the run was really starting to stabilise, even if my puzzle solving skills weren't quite improving. Before facing Skylar, I had to make my way through Chargestone Cave, and in there I got ridiculously lucky. I found a 2% encounter with Tynamo. That gave me a potential electric type for later in the run, and I even picked up a Thunderstone in the cave to evolve it down the line. On Route 7, I added a Zeb Striker, and at Celestial Tower I got a Litwick, another really strong pickup for the late game. And when grinding my Pokemon, I used my move swap on Krokorok, teaching it Dig to give me a better ground type attack moving forward. I also adjusted my lineup before the gym, swapping out Trubbish for Tynamo and Simisage for Zeb Striker to make it a little easier. With those changes, Skylar's flying type didn't stand much of a chance. Between Zeb Striker's electric attacks and Tynamo holding its own, the battle went smoother than I expected, and I walked out the Mistralton gym with my 6th badge. Another gym with no close calls or casualties, and after losing quite a few Pokemon at the start of the run, it felt good to be doing well. Before heading to Icarus City, I made one really important upgrade. I went and picked up a Heart Scale from the woman in Driftvale City, which meant I could finally teach Simisage a better grass move. Seed Bomb. With that in place, I battled Sharon, picked up Surf and kept moving forward. In Twist Mountain, I caught a Zubat, and because it was winter in-game, I was able to get through the mountain very quickly and make it to Bryson's gym without too much trouble. For the gym itself, I adjusted my lineup again, swapping Zeb Striker off the team, bringing Trubbish back in, and I also swapped Litwick for Darumaka, giving it its first real test. When fighting the gym trainers, Gerda evolved into Conkeldurr. I'm playing on a modified ROM, which turns trade evolutions into level up ones. And after that, I got to Bryson. Together with Conkeldurr and Boldore, they handled Bryson's ice types without too much trouble, and with the rest of the team backing them up, the fight was clean. No close calls, no casualties. Just a straightforward win and my 7th badge secured. And straight after the fight, Boldore evolved into Gigalith. With just 1 badge left to go, the story and my team really began to hit a turning point. At Dragon Spiral Tower, I caught a Golett, and my Tynamo finally evolved, first into Electric, and then, after using the Thunderstone, into Electros. And soon after, I evolved my Trubbish into a Garbodor. But the story wasn't slowing down either. After meeting N at the tower, I chased Team Plasma to the Relic Castle and confronted them once again before receiving the Light Stone from the museum back in Nacrene. Not long after, I crossed the Tube Line Bridge and watched Getsis give another one of his infamous speeches in Opaloosid City. With all that behind me, it was time to prepare for Drayden's gym. First, I went through Route 10, where I picked up a Herdia and I evolved it into Stoutland soon after. And then, Litwick evolved into Lampen. Luckily, I also found a Dusk Stone here on Route 10, which allowed me to evolve Lampen into Chandelure, easily one of the best Pokemon I would use in this run. I also evolved my Carablast into a Scavalier by catching a Shelmet by swapping the date, allowing me to get another encounter and leveling them up together. And after, I evolved my Vanillite into Vanillish, teaching it Ice Beam to cover the Dragon types. By the time I stepped into the Opaloosid gym, the team looked completely transformed. I had Chandelure, Escavalier, Vanillish, Conkeldurr, Gigalith, and Stoutland, and they were all ready for the fight. Against Drayden's Dragon types, that preparation paid off, and thanks to Ice Beam and my bulky evolutions, I was able to win without any close calls, finally claiming my 8th and final badge. After I left the gym, Professor Juniper gave me the Master Ball, and with the league ahead, I started fine-tuning my team. I used my last 2 move swaps, teaching Electros Discharge and Conkeldurr Hammer Arm, two major upgrades that gave them real power heading into the endgame. And to boost my team even further, I collected a series of held items: the silver powder, the black glasses, the charcoal, the magnet, and an expert belt. These small boosts would make a big difference in the damage my Pokemon could deal. With everything ready, I entered Victory Road, but I forgot to hit record. So when I stepped back outside to re-record my entry, the world had completely changed. A storm was raging, and out of nowhere, I stumbled into the wild Tornadus. For a split second, I couldn't believe it. A legendary encounter right before the Elite Four. But that was before I realised that this was still a Nuzlocke, and so I couldn't catch it. Which meant I only had one option. I mean, we've already caught a Pokemon for this route. Do we just kill it? That is fucking ridiculous. But after that surreal moment, I made my way through Victory Road, training my whole team up to level 50. And along the way, my Vanillish finally evolved into Vanillux, rounding out my team just in time for the league. Heading into the league, this was the final team. Conkelda with an expert belt using Hammer Arm, Electros holding the magnet using Discharge, Vanillux holding the Never Melt Ice and Ice Beam, Chandelure with a charcoal using Flame Burst, Escavalier holding the silver powder, still using Fury Cutter, and Stoutland using the black glasses and Crunch. 6 Pokemon, 1 move each. And now, it was time to see if they could beat the Pokemon League. With my team ready, it was time to take on the Elite Four. First up was Chantal, the Ghost Specialist. Between Stoutland's Crunch and Electros' Discharge, her team went down without too much resistance. Next was Caitlyn, the Psychic-type Master. Once again, Stoutland carried with Crunch, and I used a Scavalier with Fury Cutter to help shut down some bulkier Pokemon. Against Grimsley, things got a little tougher. His Dark types could hit hard since he had Flying-type moves, but Conkelda's Hammer Arm and Vanillux's Ice Beam were enough to carry me through safely. And finally, there was Marshall, the Fighting-type member. This time, it was Conkelda and Electros that did the heavy lifting. Although I didn't have good coverage, their raw power was able to win the battle. And with that, I was able to finish all 4 battles with no losses. The Elite Four had gone through completely clean. As I stepped into the Champions Room, the story took a turn. Instead of facing Alder, N's castle erupted from the ground in one of the most dramatic scenes in the series. I'll be honest, my emulator didn't really cooperate and the cutscene kept glitching, but the impact was still there. Team Plasma had taken over, and N was waiting. Inside the castle, I made my way through, and in one of the best moments of the game, the gym leaders that I'd beaten throughout the journey arrived to help me make it through, and with their support, I managed to reach N. N stood with Zekrom, and I had no choice but to awaken Reshiram. Although this was still a Nuzlocke, I was in a new area, so I caught it and swapped it out with a Scavalier to bring it onto the team for the final. The battle against N began with a legendary clash. My Reshiram against his Zekrom. With Dragon Breath, I managed to bring it down and set the tone for the fight. His Caracosta came out next, but Stoutland's Crunch handled it without too much trouble. Next up, his Klinklang came out, and I sent out Conkelda to use Hammer Arm. And after taking it down, I discovered it was actually a Zoroark disguised as his Klinklang. But after I took it down, his real Klinklang came out next, which also fell to Hammer Arm. His Vanillux fell after I brought out Chandelure to use Flame Burst, and his Arceus went down to Electros' Discharge. And with that, N was defeated, and it seemed like the story might finally be over. But it wasn't. Getsis immediately stepped forward, furious at N's failure, and forced me into one last battle. His team was strong, but I was hopeful that my squad had the answers. He opened with Kofagregious, and I led with Reshiram. A quick Dragon Breath took it down, but not before he was able to hit me with Toxic. His Bouffalant came out next, and I switched to Conkelda, who'd used Hammer Arm and dealt with it cleanly. Getsis' Ace High Dragon followed, and once again Conkelda came through, using Hammer Arm and taking it down instantly. Then came the mirror match, his Electros against mine. I got it low, but I couldn't finish it. I switched to Reshiram for the knockout, but Getsis used a full restore, and after trading blows, Reshiram went down. I sent in Stoutland, who finally finished Electrosoft with Crunch. His Seismitoad came out next, so I brought out Vanilluxe, whose Ice Beam handled it perfectly. And finally, his last Pokemon, Bisharp. I sent Conkeldurr in one last time, and with a single Hammer Arm, the fight was over. Ghetsis was taken away, and N told me about his dreams and his ideals, bringing the story to a close. Along the way, I lost a few important team members. Purloin to Sharon, Munna to a Team Plasma Grunt, Pignite with that unlucky crit against Lenora, Tranquil to N, Ducklet at some point I don't really remember, and even Reshiram right at the very end. In total, I lost 6 Pokemon during the whole run. Not bad for such a restrictive challenge. And with that, the challenge was complete. I beat Pokemon Black using only 1 move per Pokemon, and for good measure, even as a Nuzlocke. If you enjoyed the run, let me know what challenge I should try next, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. But to finish it off, thank you very much for watching this far.